listen. Okay,
Mhm.
so those are just some of my thoughts on what you asked, but that's it.
Well, I wonder if you, Riane, if you could take a few minutes to introduce yourself and tell us what aspects of your work feel really in the forefront right now.
Well, my work, I think, is very important at this point because all right, I'll introduce myself first. My name is Riane Eisler, and I'm sure that there will be an introduction of me. I'm an author of many books, including The Chalice and the Blade, which is what I'm best known for. My latest book, certainly I hope it's not my last, is Nurturing Our Humanity.
Mm.
And that draws very heavily from neuroscience. And it was published by Oxford University Press in 2019. And I'm a systems analyst. And as you will hear, my work is whole systems analysis. And right now, we are in a regression to what I call the domination side of the partnership domination social scale. But that regression is really in reaction to movement after movement, challenging the same thing, domination,
Mm.
over the last 300 years, during a period when the Industrial Revolution went into high gear, and there was a lot of disequilibrium because I draw a lot from chaos theory, from nonlinear dynamics, um, from system self-organizing theory. And it started with, of course, the challenge to the divinely ordained right of kings to rule their subjects. And then came the feminist movement, challenging again the divinely ordained right of men to rule over the children and women in the castles, a military metaphor of their homes. Then came the abolitionist, the civil rights, the anti-colonial movements, all challenging again the quote divinely ordained right of a quote superior race to rule over an inferior one, the peace movement, challenging the idea of force being how you fear and force, which is what the domination system uses
Hmm.
to control
Yeah.
everything and everyone in in-group versus out-group thinking, which, then came the movement also uh, to challenge uh, really injustice, economic injustice, social injustice, all the way to the environmental movement, challenging again the divinely ordained right
Right.
of men to, the dominion, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the word is very clear over everything that moveth on this earth, over our Mother Earth. Now, these are all related, and the people pushing us back have a very integrated, related domination frame. We who want a better, more peaceful, more sustainable, more just world, have very fragmented consciousness.
Mm.
All of these different movements that I've mentioned, right?
I see.
When they're really all part of the movement towards a very different culture, a partnership culture rather than a domination culture. And my work really provides that frame, and so this I'm a vehicle for this work. I really think that it's my calling
Hmm.
to this work. And I can tell you some of my background that really prepared me for it.
Hmm. Love to hear that.
You would like me to? Okay.
Sure, that sounds great.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Well, I was a child refugee from the Nazis with my parents from the Holocaust.
Hmm.
Um, and I saw both our tremendous capacity for uh, partnership or domination very early, but I didn't have that vocabulary. I saw violence, I saw insensitivity, I certainly saw in-group versus out-group thinking and acting. Um, especially when on Crystal Night, so-called because of all the glass that was shattered in Jewish homes, in synagogues, in businesses, and yes, uh, when a gang of Gestapo men, some Austrian and some German, uh, broke into our home and dragged my father away. But I also saw something else that I have since then called spiritual courage. And it was the courage of my mother to challenge injustice out of love. She recognized one of the men as an Austrian who had been an errand boy for the family business. She got furious and she said, I want him back. How dare you do this to this man who has been so good to you?
Mhm.
Now, my mother could have been killed. There were many Jewish people killed that night. But by a miracle, she wasn't. Yes, some money did pass hands. And by a miracle, she got him back. And by another miracle, my parents were able to purchase an um, really entry visa, I guess it was, to Cuba, um, which they sold, of course, for money. And I grew up um, in the industrial slums of Havana, where I saw another injustice, really terrible poverty in the midst of opulence. And all of this led me to questions. I didn't quite formulate them at that time, but there were the questions that my work seeks to answer, which is why when we humans have such an enormous capacity for caring, for sensitivity, for consciousness, uh, why has there been throughout history, as I was taught it, so much insensitivity, so much violence?
Mhm.
Is it, as we're so often told, inevitable, or is there an alternative?
Mhm.
And my work really, which I started, of course, many, many years later, um, shows that yes, the answer is there is an alternative, but we can't see it through the fragmenting lenses of the conventional social categories
Yeah.
that we inherited from, yes, from more authoritarian and from more, uh, as you will see, more domination-oriented times. Now, what prepared me for this was really my life is like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle coming together. Um, I first heard that there was such a thing as prehistory when I was a child in a Methodist private school, a bilingual school that my parents sent me. Yes, my mother sold some of the jewelry she could get out to, so I could go to private school because she wanted me to have the best education and she wanted me to have a bilingual education. And Mrs. Kirby spoke about prehistory, and I was fascinated. And years later, I was fascinated by the mystery cults that, even in historic times, were memories of that ancient way of consciousness. Um, but my first job was really as a systems scientist after I graduated college and had 1 year of law school and got married, uh, for the Systems Development Corporation,
Mm.
which was an offshoot of the Rand Corporation. And there I learned uh, in the 50s, in this much idealized, terrible time, really, um, of about systems analysis. Now, they didn't do whole systems analysis, and they were really pointed towards military systems, which I wasn't. But that was really very important. And so was when I got back 10 years later, when on my way out of my first marriage, um, to return to law school and get my JD degree, because people don't come to you and say, would you apply section 1222 of the something code to my case? They tell you a story, right?
Hmm.
It's the job of the attorney to really figure out what is the applicable law. So there were many things that really, including my stay in the suburbs and realizing how devalued really the work of caring for people in households was. When I went to cocktail parties at that time, and I said, well, I'm a homemaker. Mother, oh, yeah, well, that's nice. And, it was very clear that these people thought it was very low on the scale, of occupations, right?
Right.
Uh, and of course, waking up along with thousands of women all over, at least the Western world, um, to feminism. So
Mm.
when I embarked on my research, I included women in
Thank you.
my analysis and children and prehistory. So it was a whole systems analysis, and I saw these patterns repeating themselves.
Mm.
And I can give you examples of societies, contemporary societies, very different in many ways, but they all orient to the domination system.
Mhm.
I can also give you examples of societies that orient to the partnership side, contemporary societies. And we are not used to thinking that way because all of this information, like the neuroscience, for example, comes at us in bits and pieces. There is no frame.
Yeah. I want to hear
That's
more about the
true.
frame. So I heard you say earlier how the progressive movement, if you will, is fragmented and there's not a cohesive lens. How would you articulate such a lens?
Well, I would articulate it by looking at, and this was my research. I looked at societies both in prehistory, and there was a long period when we oriented more to the partnership side, millennia, compared to the 5 to 10,000 years after the shift,
Mhm.
domination. And it was a shift that started with violence, uh,
Yeah.
but and fear, of course. And we have DNA evidence of that, by the way. When the Maya came from the Indo-Europeans that Hitler idealized, of course, um, they killed all the men and took the women as their concubines, wives, slaves, whatever. But the DNA completely changed.
Oh,
And Maria Gimbutas, who you know about probably,
Yes.
but maybe you don't, she's an archaeologist who really writes about, she was an Indo-Europeanist. and she writes about these invasions. But anyway, the frame. If you leave out childhood and family, if you leave out gender or marginalize it or say that it's always been that way, like some religious categories, not all of them. The problem isn't religion, it's domination. What you see is a very incomplete picture of society because we know, for example, from neuroscience, as Nurturing Our Humanity, which I really highly recommend, brings out that nothing less than our brains, because we're born with incomplete brains that develop in interaction with our environment, they see what children observe or experience, neuroscience shows, directly impacts their brains, and with this, how they feel, think, and act, including how they vote as adults. Now, not everybody is impacted that way who comes from a domination family, but the majority of people are. And it's very traumatic. And really, that we hear so much today about trauma is another partnership trend. Because domination systems are trauma factories. I mean, not only families, but consider poverty is traumatic. And violence is traumatic. We just had a summit. I don't know if you know about it. It attracted 2,000 people from all over the
We
world.
both went.
Peace.
We both went to your summit, and it was marvelous.
You
Yeah,
went,
very inspiring.
Peace begins at home, and how this violence in homes ripples out. And we had, for example, a neuroscientist who worked, well, you saw him, Richardson, who worked with the Dalai Lama, dispelling that story that we've been told. Because we've been told so many false stories about, that human nature is bad, is selfish.
Yeah, and it's reflected in, the movies we watch, and just all the general cultural environment reflects a story about ourselves back to us. And I was just thinking about that, even if you watch a movie, say from the 80s, how it's like, oh, that was a different time and we had a different story we were telling ourselves. But the through thread, like you're pointing out, has a lot of violence in it, has a lot of humans being very unkind. So that's just another piece that we unfortunately need to look at
We've
too.
all been conditioned. Look, now the violence it seems further away because, unlike the Roman circus, it's not gladiators in front of us killing each other.
Right. Or hanging.
Or, but it's the same thing.
Right.
It's the same conditioning to get our adrenaline going and to fragment our consciousness. And yes, to idealize the hero as killer. And it isn't just look at our stories, for goodness sakes, blaming Eve, the first woman, or Pandora, for all of humanity's ills. Or look at the Odyssey, which has clues to the old society when women had power. I mean, think about all of the female figures who now in the Odyssey, according to Homer or whoever it was that actually wrote the Odyssey, because he was a bard, he just repeated, the story. Um, they're monsters or just sex objects for the hero. I mean, the sirens eat men. Charybdis is a monster too. And it has ecological implications because the hero as killer kills some of the sirens, for example, or Charybdis, really were deities in the old
Mm.
belief system.
Mm-hmm.
But Circe and Calypso are still very powerful sorceresses, priestesses, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now they help the hero and they're just his sex objects. But uh, the hero as killer gets his power through a woman, through Penelope,
Yeah,
the
remember that.
power to reign and now to also kill, of course. So it is really, we're surrounded by these stories, by this, but we can do something. We can use our voices to put, to provide the frame for people. Now, this was a long way of answering your story,
Yeah,
but
no worries.
let me give you some examples
Yes,
of
I love
society,
Thank
examples.
you.
because that's contemporary societies. Think of the Taliban and think of
Mm,
fundamentalist Iran. They're religious Eastern societies. Think of the Nazis regime in Germany or Stalin's regime
mm,
in the former Soviet Union. Um, or, one is Eastern, but the others are Western and they're secular,
mm,
or rightist or leftist.
Mhm.
mm.
Um, and yet they all share the same configuration. First, in both the family and the state and in economics, it's top down.
Yeah.
Capitalism is just capitalism as neoliberalism. Well, I mean, which is ridiculous because they're very good at names, but liberalism, trickle-down economics is neither new nor liberal, right?
Right.
Yes. Right.
Nor is it working.
I mean, neither. But it is really the last in a long series. I mean, think of Chinese emperors, think of Arab sheiks, think of Indian pashas, think of feudal lords. In feudal times, those on the bottom of the pyramid, which is what the domination system is, um, they were supposed to content themselves with the scraps, literally falling from the opulent tables of those on top. That's what trickle-down economics is about, isn't
Mm,
it?
It seems to be working that way.
Yeah, so it's not a new thing. We've inherited both Smith and Marx perpetuated what I call a hidden system of gendered values.
Mm.
Can you say more about that, Dr. Eisler?
Yes, very definitely. I wrote a whole book on that called uh, The Real Wealth of Nations, and the subtitle is Creating a Caring Economics. Now, Smith and then Marx did challenge some traditions of domination. Smith challenged mercantilism, the rule and of over all and the resources control of kings and so-called nobles, these thugs that raided each other and all the time in their castles and in feudal times. And then came Marx and he challenged the bourgeoisie, which at that time, the so-called golden age of capitalism, right, was really, well, like today, it's a regression. Remember, we're in the
Right.
midst of this regression to domination.
The robber barons.
And lo and behold, the gap, the between halves at the top of the pyramid of
Mhm.
control all the resources, and those at the bottom is huge.
Yeah.
But they left out, well, for them, because this was the norm in their time. Remember when Locke wrote about the so-called rights of man, and he was very clear, this does not apply to the right of man to control women and children.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's how it was. And we need lenses, and these are lenses through this frame is a lens through which to see, quote, reality. So where were we here? Because I detoured. Oh, Marx and Smith. So the norm in Marx and Smith's time was still in Marx's time that the work of caring for people, starting at birth, as well as caring for everybody, in households, was to be done for free by a woman in a male-controlled household.
Mm.
And so they called this work reproductive rather than productive. And that's still taught in our business schools. This distinction, which is a false distinction between reproductive and productive, is still taught in our business schools, in our econ schools, and it has to stop.
Yeah.
And we can make it stop. I mean, just focus on that one thing, and you can make a huge difference. Got the University of Berkeley right there, California. I mean, look, both capitalism and socialism came out of the 1700s and the 1800s. We are now in the 21st century, post-industrial era. So on that count alone, they would be antiquated, right?
Yeah, you would think.
And yet we keep arguing about capitalism versus socialism, socialism versus capitalism, when both are based on a very incomplete, to put it mildly, economic map. Do you know that they exclude the three life-sustaining sectors? The natural economy, the volunteer community economy, and the household economy, because they're outside of the market.
Oh, yeah. Huh.
Okay, so what do we reward? I mean, this is a time of transition and there really is a struggle between the domination orientation and the partnership orientation. But as I said, the people pushing us back have a very coherent frame. I mean, think of how they focus on children and on family, big time.
Mm.
There's only one kind of family, and we have to control what children learn in schools, right? Education.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, the whole trad wife.
Think of how they focus on gender. Our president said there are only two types of people, women and men, and their rigid gender stereotypes. And yes, men are ranked over women, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Unfortunately.
mean, they recognize the importance of these elements. So the second element of the partnership or domination system is how they construct gender roles and relations.
Mhm.
Gender is not, as we've been taught, just a women's issue, which in itself
Mm.
is pretty crazy. It is an issue. I mean, the people pushing us back also deny that there's anybody in between, female
Mm.
and male, even though there have been people who have been gay and transgender for eons, forever.
Yeah.
It's
And
true.
the trend towards gender fluidity is part of this. But instead, we too are in this in-group versus out-group. It's so-called cis, which I hate that term. and let's the trans fight each other. We're fighting each other over nothing because we're used to fighting in group versus out group.
Mm.
And nations that have oriented, and I'm being very nonlinear here, because I also wanted to give you some examples of societies that have contemporary societies that orient more to the partnership side. I think of Ireland, which really moved fast.
Hmm. Yeah.
But think of the Nordic nations, Finland, Sweden, Norway.
Yeah.
They're not socialist. They have a very healthy market economy, but they have it precisely because they have caring policies.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. They're centering the health and happiness of families, women and children.
Universal health care, very generous paid parental leave. And we have to be really careful how we structure that because they at first just made it parental leave. And well, because men get paid much more than women get paid, mostly men didn't take it, right? Only women did. And they said, well, in a family in which there is both a woman and a man, unless both takes it, neither gets it.
Mm. Right.
So you learn. I mean, we're kind of, we don't want to go back to any good old days in prehistory.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
That's
not gonna
true.
happen.
And we're kind of flying the airplane while we're building it in this time of transition, but we've got to change the economic system because as long as caring is coded feminine and devalued, caring for nature, there's nothing in what Marx and Smith wrote about caring for our natural life support system. Nature was there for one thing, to be exploited.
Yeah.
But this is not sustainable, and nature herself is not telling us that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But denial is part of the domination. Remember how trauma is denial? Is part of the domination system, but so is denial, starting with the denial in families of violence. Because look, if you're dependent for life, for food, for shelter on your caregivers, you can't say that they're causing you pain. You
Yeah.
deny that. And that denial ripples out. And then you have climate change denial. It's a habit, isn't it? You have denial of election results. You have denial of COVID-19. You have denial of reality. Now, all of us are somewhat traumatized, but the people who are really coming from domination, rigid domination families now uh, are very traumatized, and it's very hard. So we've got to focus on just changing the system of rewards.
Mm. Yeah. So tell me more about that. What system of rewards?
Well, the system of rewards is economic, isn't it?
Yeah. Right.
I mean, if children grow up, as I said in my keynote to the Peace Begins at Home Summit,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that, caring for people is less than, is less valuable because it's not paid, right? It's not.
Yeah.
Money an economic invention. So is slavery. It's a domination economic invention, okay? So is paid parental leave. It's a partnership economic invention. We have to really think differently. We have to maintain, we need a market. We don't happen to have a free one.
Right.
We need uh, government policies, but we need enlightened government policies.
In
But
Santa Cruz,
we
I was
need to change our values. What do we value? What do we measure?
Hmm.
And you were going to say something. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
just yeah, it's just that in Santa Cruz, and probably where you live as well in Marin, we have such a crisis of affordability. It feels like everyone's running so hard just to survive.
That's right.
The desire to like do more volunteering, do more caring work in our community. I think it's a real challenge for people, and I'm wondering if you have anything to say about, how to change the trajectory of affordability.
Well, look, you have to change the system.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't. Yes, you can build more housing. Okay. I mean, we know that. And but that's not the answer.
It seems like it has to do with these people at the top skimming off so much
People
wealth.
of the top have to give up some of, I mean, they are not happy
Right.
because they're scared that somebody will come and displace them at the top. Look at how they're kowtowing to a bully, really.
Hmm.
I mean, because they know that, ah, but they know deep, I mean, some of them like Bezos, and I'm trying to wean myself from Amazon, it's really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's so convenient. Well, I wish to hell that we had the money to create something like Amazon
Hmm.
that is community owned.
I love
That's a
that.
beautiful idea.
See, that would be, there are lots of community owned businesses, even in the United States, by the way,
Mhm.
and certainly in the Nordic nations. And they're not socialist. And it's not because they're small. Think of all the small nations that orient to the domination side, okay?
Hmm.
I mean, this is fragmented consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the things that happened in the Nordic nations, as is happening in Ireland, is women are rising into positions of power. Not because women are better than men. I have always, from the beginning of this research, understood that the men's movement is really just as important as the women's movement
Mm.
I like that.
Yeah.
because we have to change both the stereotype of the hero, as violent and as, violence is the thing that superior violence. We have to change our GDP. We started that. We got a grant from the Kellogg Foundation. It's been very hard to get money for systemic work.
Yeah, I can imagine.
People, we need both tactics and we need strategies. And I really want to talk about that for a moment.
Yes, please.
Because I want to
Please
talk
do.
about the four cornerstones that we have to focus on. One, of course, is what the summit was about, family and childhood. We have to understand that families just don't rise up in isolation. They're part of the culture and subculture, aren't they?
Mhm.
Right.
And it's a two-way relationship. But yes, violence in the family. First of all, we need to change the name to domestic, forget about domestic violence. It gets marginalized. Call it family violence,
Yeah.
violence in the family against women mostly and children, but also against men and certainly against boys.
Hmm.
Mhm.
I mean, it's family violence.
Yeah.
Um, So that's the first cornerstone. The second one is gender. Gender is not just a women's issue, it is a primary social, family, social, and economic organizing principle. economic organizing principle, if we can just change consciousness about that, that is our job. Because it starts with changing consciousness. Then comes the action, and then comes more consciousness as we change some of the stories. Some of them, GDP leaves out trees. But you know when they're part of GDP? When they're dead, when they're a log that can be bought and sold.
Yeah,
This
that's
is crazy.
nuts.
And we got a grant from the Kellogg Foundation, and you can find them someplace on our website. Social wealth economic indicators, which really take into account not only inputs, but also not only outputs, which is what most GDP alternatives do. They give us a snapshot. And there is some consciousness, at least, of inequality, but not enough consciousness of gender, not at all. Those. But they also look at inputs. And for example, the US invests less, and this was before the current regression, in families than any other, quote, developed nation.
Yeah.
And not coincidentally, it has the highest infant mortality rate, the highest child poverty rate, and the highest maternal mortality rate of any, quote, developed nation. There is an impact, a relationship between what we invest in, it all boils down to values.
Yeah, for sure.
So we've got 4 cornerstones. One is childhood and family. One is gender, which, as you saw, ripples into economics because they're all related. But we have to focus on economics because people and on changing what is taught in business and economic schools. And we have to have much more interdisciplinary education.
Yeah.
I agree with that, Dr. Eisler. When I was working with you previously, you were talking about adding unpaid labor force of taking care of people into the, national GDP. And I'm wondering if that would help level the playing field if we did that.
Very much so. And they're talking about it finally,
Good.
But the thing about it is, well, it's not going to happen under this administration, obviously. But look, I mean, we had, when we developed the social wealth economic indicators, we worked with the Urban Institute in Washington, D.C. We had 3 reports preceding it. We had a meeting with top economists, including the guy who produces GDP, and he knows it's, I mean, even the guy who introduced it knows that it doesn't measure everything. So it has to change. But yeah, and we probably need a guaranteed annual income. But it has to go to all the adults, not to, quote, a family, because many families still are headed by a male. And we know from, you really have to read The Real Wealth of Nations, because there are studies, not now, but there were studies showing that $10, a Brazilian study, for example, $10 in the hands of a mother, $1 in the hands of a mother was equivalent to $10 in the hands of a father. And not because men are bad or inferior and women are better, but men are taught, they're socialized that to be entitled, right?
True.
They're entitled to the money to gamble it away, to spend it on whoring. The macho ideal, right? It spring out of no place. It's part of the domination system. and it was not part of a more partnership-oriented culture.
Right.
So a
Dr.
lot
Eisler,
of
what do you think we can do to, level the playing field in our own little way with our group in Santa Cruz? Should we be more, politically advocating for these sorts of changes?
well, right now, a lot of money is going into the election,
Mhm.
and it needs to go. But that is really not going to change the system completely. It'll change some of the worst excesses, perhaps. But the system rewards, we have to work on the four cornerstones.
Okay, thank you.
Because if we don't, we're really, if we try to ameliorate some of the suffering, for example, we're maintaining the system, aren't we?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's a good point.
And that's what we have to do to some extent, but we at the same time need to work on those four cornerstones and story and language and using our voices, getting people to look at articles, go to the Interdisciplinary Journal of Partnership Studies. I've written many articles there. I've written tons and tons of articles. Look at some articles. I'll send you some if you remind me. A compass, an interview with the Scientific American. Have people learn to connect the dots. Some of the dots are huge, like gender, like family, for goodness sakes.
Mm-hmm.
And see, and I'll send you those articles and you can make them available to people. I'll send you four articles, one from the Interdisciplinary Journal of Partnership Studies on economics, and remind me to do that.
Okay.
Two very short articles and very recent articles from Compass, which is the Journal of Professional Futurists. And fourth, my interview with the Scientific American on how authoritarianism really has its roots in families.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Dr. Eisler. Thank you for doing that for us.
Yeah.
I want you to do that. I mean, I'm very much really concerned now about changing our consciousness
Yeah.
because that's what it has to be. The domination systems, if they keep replicating themselves, we're going to have trauma, we're going to have homelessness, we're going to have everything that these are all related problems. These are symptoms,
Yep.
Yes.
not root causes. And our job is to shift those four cornerstones from domination to partnership.
Wow, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right. Well, listen, I'm so glad you have this organization. Um, Hopefully, some of your members will want to do this work on symptoms.
mhm.
I mean, not just
On
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 symptoms,
the root
but
cause.
on roots, on
Yeah.
root causes.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, we just perpetuate the system in various forms.
It's true.
We do really have tons of resources on the site, on both the site for the Interdisciplinary Journal of Partnership Studies, and of course, on our website, it's a centerforpartnership.org, and on my website, which is rianeeisler.com.
We are going to read those and get them out there.
Yes,
Good.
we
Our
are.
community. And Dr.
Well,
Eisler, I just love to, we'll just for fun share initiatives that come out of all the inspiration that you've shared with us today and in the Peace Begins at Home Summit. And I just want to thank you for your work
Yeah.
all these years.
well, thank you for really being so receptive to the distinction that we must make between putting our finger in the dike and maintaining the system
Mm.
and really changing some of the root causes. And those are root causes. I mean, think of what the regression looks like here.
Yeah.
Focuses on family, focuses on gender big time. Have to be
Mhm.
rigid, can't have gender fluidity, have to have ranking,
Mhm.
etc. On economics, economics is fundamental. It's about values. What do we value? What do we
Yes.
measure?
Mhm.
And of course, story and language. And that's really an entry point. Changing the story. You've both read The Chalice and the Blade.
Mhm.
We have to convince people that there is a better alternative. You can't just critique.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to invite them into something better.
You
And
have to show them that there is a better alternative, not perfect.
Mhm.
I mean, perfect, the old saying says, perfect is the enemy of the good. Um, but
True.
it is better. It is better for women, for men, for everybody in between, and
Yeah.
for our planet.
I like to frame this as a social experiment. Then we don't have to feel like we have to get it right the first time. It's like it's going to be
That's
generations.
it. That's it. I mean, we use our creativity. It's very interesting. We take it for granted that everything around us is a human creation, the desk, the computer, but so are our cultures.
That's right.
And so are what we value and what we reward. Okay.
Mhm.
So slowly, and think of all the movements. I mean, they
Yep.
sprang out, and it was really, as Margaret Mead said, a small, often unpopular group of people, of women, men, everybody in between, uh, doing that.
Mhm.
And look at what we've achieved. And yes, of course, there's a reaction to it.
Yeah, nice to normalize that.
But the problem is not religion. It is really religion as the core of and then I'll stop. But at the core of all of our religions, almost all anyway, our partnership, if you will, feminine teachings of caring, of love, of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And then there is this overlay of domination
Mhm.
teachings.
Yeah, all the
And one
rules.
of the projects that I don't think I'll see in my lifetime, but I really keep it in mind, we need to get representatives from all of the major religions and some of the minor ones too, uh, together to sort the grain, the core, the heart from the
Mm,
chaff.
that's a really good point.
Oh, I love that.
And that's why that book, Chalice and the Blades, is so important, because it foreshadows so much of what we're learning today. There's the Chinese, that's the latest, but it comes at us in bits and pieces. So, and we don't have a frame, right?
Mm.
Uh, they discovered in Chinese prehistory, Chinese archaeologists, a prehistoric society that was matrilineal and matrifocal and was more peaceful. So, and more equitable. So you have to really connect the dots and you need a frame. And that's it.
Yeah, and thank you for connecting the dots. You're so good at that.
Yeah. Thank you,
Okay.
Dr. Eisler.
Well,
Oh,
good luck to you. Keep me posted on what you do.
Absolutely.
And and ask me to send you those materials. I'll be
Okay.
glad to. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for your time, Dr. Eisler.
Well, it's my pleasure. I want to support what you do. Um, and yes, I want to get this frame out so that we can be more effective.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Thank you.
All right. Bye bye.
Beautiful day. Thank
All
you.
the very best.
Mm.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.